This story, titled "My Fiancé Secretly Planned a Wedding Without Me and Expected Me to Pay for It, So I Called It Off," is one of the most shocking and emotional experiences of my life. I'm Emily, 29 years old, from the United States, and this story is about how I discovered the lengths my fiancé went to in order to fulfill his entitled fantasy, without my input, my consent, or my respect. And yes, it all started with the perfect relationship, or so I thought. When I first met Mark, he was everything I had dreamed of. Charming, funny, and ambitious, he swept me off my feet. We met at a mutual friend's party, and from the moment we started talking, it felt like we had known each other forever. He listened, he cared, and he made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. It didn't take long for our relationship to get serious. After just a year of dating, he proposed during a romantic dinner at my favorite restaurant. I said yes without hesitation. It was magical, perfect, everything I'd ever imagined. At first, our engagement was wonderful. We talked endlessly about our future together, what kind of house we'd buy, and how we wanted our lives to look. But when it came to the wedding planning, something felt off. Every time I brought up the subject, Mark would brush it off, saying we had plenty of time to figure it out. "Don't stress about it," he'd say with a reassuring smile. "I've got it all under control." At first, I thought he was just being sweet and trying to take the pressure off me. But as months went by, his reluctance to involve me in any wedding discussions started to feel strange. I mean, I wasn't expecting to do everything myself, but I thought we'd plan it together. After all, it was our wedding, not his. When I pressed him for details, he would give vague answers or quickly change the subject. "Trust me," he'd say. "I've got this." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something in my gut told me there was more going on. One evening, about 6 months before the wedding date we had tentatively discussed, I came home from work and found Mark sitting at the dining table, surrounded by papers. At first, I was excited, thinking he had finally started planning the wedding with me. But as I got closer, I realized something was very wrong. The papers weren't blank. They were receipts, contracts, and invoices. For a wedding. Our wedding. A wedding I hadn't even been consulted about. "What's all this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mark looked up, startled, and quickly tried to shuffle the papers out of sight. "Oh, nothing. Just some things I've been working on." I wasn't buying it. I reached for the papers, and he reluctantly let me take them. As I flipped through them, my heart sank. Venue bookings, catering orders, floral arrangements, everything had been decided without me. And it wasn't just the planning that shocked me. It was the cost. "Mark, what is this?" I demanded, holding up an invoice for a 5-figure deposit on a luxury venue. "When did we decide on this?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "I thought it would be a nice surprise," he said casually. "I didn't want to bother you with all the details." "A nice surprise," I repeated, my voice rising. "Mark, this is our wedding. How could you make all these decisions without me?" He sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Emily, you're always so busy with work. I just wanted to take the burden off you." Isn't that what a good fiancé does? I stared at him, speechless. It wasn't just the fact that he had planned an entire wedding without consulting me. It was the audacity of it all. He had chosen a venue I didn't even like, hired vendors I'd never heard of, and picked a menu that didn't include any of my favorite foods. And then there was the cost. The total budget was astronomical, far more than I had ever imagined spending on a wedding. "Mark, this isn't taking the burden off me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is taking control away from me. This is supposed to be our day, and you've completely excluded me from it." He rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. "You're overreacting, Emily. I've handled everything. All you have to do is show up." That was the moment I realized we had a much bigger problem than just wedding planning. Mark's attitude wasn't just dismissive, it was entitled. He genuinely believed that he had the right to make all the decisions, and that I should be grateful for it. But what pushed me over the edge was what he said next. "Oh, and about the budget," he added casually, "I was thinking you could cover the costs. You make more money than I do, and it just makes sense." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to pay for a wedding I didn't plan?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. "Why not?" he said with a shrug. "It's for both of us, isn't it?" At that moment, I realized just how little respect he had for me. This wasn't about the wedding. This was about control, entitlement, and his complete disregard for my feelings. I had always seen Mark as my partner, my equal. But now I saw him for what he really was. Someone who valued his own wants and needs above mine. I stood there, staring at him as 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. How could I marry someone who treated me like this? How could I trust him to be my partner in life when he couldn't even be my partner in planning our wedding? And most importantly, how could I respect myself if I let him get away with this? I took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. This wedding isn't happening, I said firmly, and neither is this engagement. Mark looked at me like I had just slapped him. What are you talking about? He demanded. You're not serious. Oh, I'm serious, I said, my voice steady. You've shown me exactly who you are, Mark, and I'm not going to spend the rest of my life with someone who doesn't respect me. He tried to argue, to convince me that I was being unreasonable, but I had made up my mind. I packed a bag that night and stayed with a friend. The next day, I called the vendors and canceled everything. Yes, I lost some of the deposits, but it was worth it to get out of a relationship that was built on lies and manipulation. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt betrayed, angry, and heartbroken all at once. Mark tried calling me several times, leaving voicemails filled with excuses, apologies, and even guilt trips. He begged me to reconsider, claiming he had only planned the wedding without me because he thought it would make me happy. But his words didn't match his actions, and I knew better than to fall for his empty promises. What hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that Mark had never truly seen me as an equal. I started to replay moments from our relationship, little red flags that I had brushed aside because I was so caught up in the idea of us. Like the time he dismissed my concerns about our shared finances, saying, "I'll take care of it," only to later reveal he had made decisions that put me in a difficult position. Or how he always managed to steer conversations back to what he wanted, subtly downplaying my opinions as if they didn't matter. But planning an entire wedding behind my back? That was a whole new level of control, one I couldn't ignore. I knew I had to move on, but untangling our lives was easier said than done. For starters, Mark and I had been living together in a condo we jointly leased. When I returned to pack up my things, he was waiting for me. The moment I walked through the door, he started pleading his case again. "Emily, I know I messed up," he said, his voice filled with desperation. "But I was trying to make things easier for you. I thought you'd love what I planned." I paused mid-step and looked at him. "Mark, you didn't do this for me. You did it for yourself. You wanted control, and you wanted me to foot the bill. That's not love. That's manipulation." His face fell, but I wasn't done. "You didn't even think to include me in decisions about our wedding, our marriage. How am I supposed to believe you'd include me in decisions about our future? This isn't just about the wedding, Mark. It's about trust, and you've broken mine." He started to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I'm done, Mark. You need to respect that." I could see the realization dawning on him that I wasn't going to change my mind. He looked defeated, but didn't try to stop me as I packed my things. By the time I left, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't just about ending the relationship. It was about reclaiming my voice and my self-respect. Once I moved into a small apartment on my own, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. I had to deal with nosy family members who couldn't understand why I had ended the engagement. Mark, of course, had spun his own version of events, painting himself as the well-meaning fiancé who had only wanted to surprise his bride. But I refused to engage in the drama. I knew the truth, and that was enough. However, there was one conversation I couldn't avoid: telling my parents. They had adored Mark and had been thrilled about our engagement. Breaking the news to them was painful, but they surprised me with their support. "Emily, we just want you to be happy," my mom said, holding my hand. "If this was the right decision for you, then we're behind you 100%. Their understanding meant everything to me. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, even when it felt like the world was against me. A few weeks after the breakup, I received an unexpected call from one of Mark's friends, Jake. At first, I was hesitant to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Jake wasted no time getting to the point. "Emily, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what Mark put you through," he said. "I had no idea he was planning the wedding without you, but looking back, I can see how controlling he was." His words caught me off guard. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, unsure of his intentions. "Because you deserve to know that you did the right thing," Jake replied. "Mark's been acting like a victim, but the truth is he brought this on himself. You're better off without him." Hearing those words from someone in Mark's circle felt validating. For so long, I had questioned whether I had overreacted or been too harsh. But deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. As the months passed, I focused on healing and rediscovering myself. I threw myself into my work, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in ages, and even took up a new hobby, painting. It was therapeutic to pour my emotions onto a canvas, to create something beautiful out of the pain I had endured. I also learned an important lesson about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. For so long, I had prioritized Mark's feelings over my own, convincing myself that compromise was the key to a successful relationship. But there's a difference between compromise and self-sacrifice, and I had finally learned to recognize that line. One day, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a post that made my heart skip a beat. It was Mark. He had posted a photo of himself with a new woman, along with the caption, "New Beginnings." At first, I felt a pang of anger and sadness, but then I reminded myself that his choices were no longer my concern. I had let go of that chapter of my life, and I wasn't going to let him drag me back into it. The experience with Mark taught me so much about myself and what I deserve in a relationship. I deserve a partner who values my voice, respects my boundaries, and sees me as an equal. And while it was painful to end things with Mark, I'm grateful for the clarity it brought me. Life after Mark was a journey of self-discovery. While the initial heartbreak had been intense, I started to feel lighter as time went on. I no longer had to deal with his controlling tendencies, his dismissive remarks, or the constant weight of trying to make someone else happy while neglecting myself. For the first time in years, I felt free. But as much as I was moving on, Mark wasn't. He started reaching out again, trying different tactics to win me back. Sometimes he'd send long, apologetic messages claiming he'd changed. Other times he'd resort to guilt, reminding me of the good times we'd shared. And then there were the occasional moments of anger, accusations that I had overreacted, that I was selfish for walking away. One day, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing the most pitiful expression I'd ever seen. "Emily, please," he said, his voice trembling. "Can we just talk? I miss you." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mark, I've already said everything I needed to say. There's nothing left to discuss." "But we were supposed to build a life together," he insisted. "I made a mistake, but doesn't everyone deserve a second chance?" I shook my head. "This isn't just about one mistake, Mark. It's about a pattern of behavior that showed me exactly where I stood in your eyes. I deserve more than that." He tried to argue, but I stood firm. Eventually, he realized that I wasn't going to budge. He left, looking defeated, and I closed the door with a sense of finality. That was the last time I saw him in person. While Mark's attempts to rekindle our relationship faded, the lessons I learned from our time together remained with me. I became more intentional about the relationships I allowed into my life. Not just romantic ones, but friendships and family dynamics too. I started prioritizing people who respected me, who valued my opinions, and who brought positivity into my life. I also poured more energy into my career. Work had always been a source of fulfillment for me, but now it became a sanctuary. I threw myself into new projects, took on challenges I'd previously shied away from, and even earned a promotion. It felt good to achieve something entirely on my own terms, without anyone overshadowing my accomplishments or trying to take credit. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Mark had gotten engaged to the woman from his social media post. At first, the news stung. It was a reminder of what could have been. But as I thought about it more, I realized how lucky I was to have escaped a future that wasn't right for me. I imagined what my life would have looked like if I had stayed with Mark. I would have been constantly walking on eggshells, trying to meet his expectations while sacrificing my own happiness. I would have been stuck in a cycle of control and manipulation, unable to truly be myself. Instead, I was living a life that was authentically mine. I was surrounded by people who loved and supported me, pursuing passions that brought me joy, and building a future that felt aligned with my values. One evening, while having dinner with friends, I shared the story of my breakup with Mark. As I recounted the details, I realized how far I had come since those dark days. My friends listened intently, nodding and offering words of encouragement. "Emily, you're so strong," one of them said. "Walking away from someone you loved couldn't have been easy, but it was the right thing to do." Their words warmed my heart. It reminded me that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the greatest growth. In the end, my relationship with Mark became a turning point in my life. It taught me to trust my instincts, to stand up for myself, and to never settle for less than I deserve. While it was painful to walk away, it was also empowering. Looking back, I don't regret a single decision, because through the pain, the heartbreak, and the challenges, I found something priceless: myself. And to anyone out there who might be facing a similar situation, remember this: your voice matters. Your happiness matters. Never let anyone dim your light or make you feel like you're not enough. You deserve a love that uplifts you, not one that tries to control you. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a tough relationship? I'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, take care.